How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Async Collaboration for Distributed Teams. Now, over the past few years, the way that we all work together has been changing, right? Your teammates might be in different locations, working completely different hours. But what hasn't changed is that we all still need to get our work done, right? So how do we do that? While the traditional face-to-face meetings are still important, there's a lot of value we can provide without those real-time interactions, by instead working together asynchronously. And that's what you're about to learn. This course was designed by Atlassian's top work futurists, where here they share their latest tips and best practices to help you collaborate effectively with your distributed team and get work done async. After this course, you'll be able to use async tools and practices to reduce meeting time, boost the efficiency and engagement of your distributed team, and improve overall team effectiveness using Atlassian best practices. At the end of this course, you can pass a multiple choice assessment on the Atlassian University website, and you'll earn an official badge you can share with your network. So are you ready to start collaborating async? Check out the next video to continue learning. In this video, you're going to learn the basics of distributed teamwork, what is synchronous versus asynchronous communication, the benefits of asynchronous communication, how to determine what type of communication you need, and the 3 categories of collaboration touchpoints.
Over the past decade, distributed teamwork has been growing in popularity. Global companies have actually been playing with distributed work for years, but it wasn't until COVID-19 happened when the rest of us kind of had to be forced into that world as well. The biggest challenge we found when actually doing distributed work is the way we used to collaborate is not the same way we collaborate now. Companies like Atlassian, as well as many others, have actually come up with what we call our distributed first teamwork model. Basically what this means is that for us as employees, we can work when we want, where we want. That might be in the office, that might be at your home, or it might be somewhere in between. But we want to give you the opportunity to determine where you can get your best work done. Now, we've seen value in this because we're able to hire the right talent from the right places. We're able to allow people that autonomy to feel like they can kind of control their lives and what they do. And honestly, it's simply unlocked new ways for us to collaborate too, new tools and techniques. And so as part of this course, we actually want to talk with you about new techniques that you can apply to your work lives to help you be a little bit more collaborative in a distributed world. We're going to share with you the ideas of asynchronous communication and how, when applied properly, can actually unlock your ability to collaborate in new and creative ways. Before we get too far down the road here, let's actually start with some definitions, and let's define what sync versus async communication is. Sync communication takes place in real time. It's that live exchange of information when one person shares information with others, and it's happening through things like maybe a meeting, a video conference, or through things like a phone call. When you do a synchronous communication event, it usually requires multiple people communicating together all at the same time. Now, async, on the other hand, doesn't take place in real time. This is where someone has some information they want to share and they put it out into the world and they allow others to react, respond, comment on their own time. It doesn't require that real-time interaction. Examples of async communication include things like messaging tools, think Slack or Microsoft Teams, recording video messages and sharing them with your teammates, or maybe Confluence pages or Google Docs. Anything where we can put some information out there and there's not an expectation that it's responded to in real time right away. So why use async communication anyway? What's the benefits? Async communication at the levels we see today are brand new. And to be honest, it can feel a little scary. It feels like we've lost some control over the work that's around us, or have lost the ability to gain valuable insights into what's going on. The thing is when asynchronous work is done well, you actually get better clarity into the work going on and get more insights. All of a sudden, you start seeing some immense business benefits that come out of that, as well as team and cultural benefits. Some of the business benefits include things like saving time and money. It'll help boost efficiency and transparency within and across our teams. It allows for work to happen, not just in an 8-hour chunk, but throughout the day. Allows us to what we call follow the sun. Some of the cultural benefits include things like helping build more team rapport, especially when async is done right. It helps enable your people to feel like they can focus more on getting work done and not being slammed by meetings and messages all day long. And it demonstrates an organization's commitment to employee well-being. How do I determine if I need a sync or async collaboration? Now remember, every organization is going to be a little different, so these are just some general ideas to consider. Sync communication is typically better for things like manager one-on-one times, rapid collaboration sessions where you need to do something quickly, and what we like to call at Atlassian, intentional togetherness. This is that ability to build bonds with your teammates. Not everything can be done in an asynchronous ways. Relationships really struggle to be built in an asynchronous model, so you've got to put that intentional time together. Async communication, on the other hand, is good for things like providing and consuming status updates, reviewing and providing feedback on work, as well as things like project ideation. What's really neat is that coming out of this course, you'll learn tools and techniques that you can use in an async world and learn how to apply those to sync meetings to make them better. When you look at the collaboration touchpoints you have out there, whether it be meetings or other interaction times, there are really three categories we can group them into: improving, eliminating, and transforming. Improving is all about making meetings that we currently have today better. Eliminating is all about removing the unnecessary meetings, those things that really could have been an email or a Slack message. And transforming, which is all about taking that meeting or touch point and turning it into something new, something more valuable. It may still be a meeting, but it may be a meeting with some async collaboration techniques involved, something different that can actually reap better value in the end.
In this video, you're going to learn new tools for async collaboration, from messaging apps to ideation tools.
Let's start out at a high level here, where I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to some tools and techniques that you can hopefully use to take the place of some of those face-to-face interactions that you have, make them a little bit more asynchronous. These tools and techniques are actually things that we do here at Atlassian, so I hope you get some inspiration from those. All right, let's talk instant messaging apps. Now, I know what you're thinking. Cool, I'll have fewer meetings, but more email. Doesn't that create a new problem? I hear you. And we all know that email isn't the most effective way to get work done. And we at Atlassian, we recognize that. For us, we actually use instant messaging tools like Slack to help us kind of instigate that back and forth communication in an asynchronous way. For me, I remember when I first started with Atlassian, one of the first things they did was teach us how to use Slack in an asynchronous way. And I was like, oh, I've used instant messaging apps before, but how is this different? Well, the thing is, they said, when you go and you message someone, instead of saying, hey, you say, hey, and your payload, what do you need? Because the idea is that that person may not respond to you for a day, and that's okay. And instead of having that back and forth of small talk over the course of 4 days, give that information that right up front, what you need, so that way that person can get back to you right away. Some of us at Atlassian are actually using messaging apps like Slack to actually help replace daily meetings. We have daily updates, and instead of getting all on a phone call to talk about what's going on, instead we actually all go into Slack and we put our update in terms of what's going on and any blockers we have right there for everyone to see. No longer requires us to all be on the phone at the same time, but everyone can still have visibility in terms of what's going on. Another tip I have around messaging tools is actually consider turning off notifications. And hear me out on this one. I imagine every time you see that notification pop up with a new message, you immediately go to that. You just keep going back and forth, back and forth. Your goal is to have that focus heads down time. So turn off your notifications and instead put some dedicated time on your schedule for when you're going to check those messages and respond. That way, again, it is based off of your schedule and you can kind of make sure you can control the world around you so you can get stuff done. Let's talk video messaging tools. Video tools like Loom or Zoom are actually great for async collaboration and can actually help reduce meetings by 29%. These sorts of tools allow us to record some short videos around some specific context and then seek feedback from our colleagues on them. Maybe you want to walk somebody through a document you just put together, or there's something else that you need to get feedback on. Simply go record that 5-minute video and then send it out to the group and say, hey, I Could you send me your feedback in 24 hours? That allows people to work on their time, but also communicate a ton of great context through the video. We found too that short form videos are the best. I'm thinking 5 to 10 minutes. No one wants to go and watch a 1 to 2 hour Zoom recording. I mean, honestly, if you do that, you look back at it and you realize, you probably only needed about 5 or 10 minutes of that content to actually do your job. So for us, let's get rid of the noise and focus in on just, again, that small sliver of information that we need people to have in order to move forward. The other cool thing is that tools like Slack and MS Teams, they all have their own version of a video recording functionality. So take advantage of it. It's really easy. I mean, personally, I'm not a big reader. I love to watch the videos and hear what someone's talking about. It gives me extra context. Let's talk status meeting tools. The dreaded status meeting that no one likes to go to. Well, here at Atlassian, we use a tool called Atlas that gives us the ability to essentially communicate and collaborate around project status without ever having to come together in person. Atlas is essentially a teamwork directory that allows teams to share information and updates on the projects and goals that they're working towards, as well as connect with other teams and be able to show who's all working on what. Without having to meet in person, teams go into Atlas and update their projects and goals with their latest updates. And then for stakeholders like myself, every Monday morning when I roll in, all of a sudden I've got an email or a Slack message from Atlas sharing with me those updates so I know what's going on. That's awesome. Talk about a true information radiator. Let's talk work management tools. Tools like Jira Work Management and Trello are our tools of choice for helping us track our deliverables and the things we're doing day to day. These tools actually allow us to trace our work back to larger initiatives and be able to see what everyone's working on in relation to what we're working on. And when we need to, it allows us to be notified when changes happen to things that we care about. These tools allow teams and individuals to track their work and their deliverables day to day. They can use it as a way to both trace what they're working towards, as well as to communicate with others using things like @ mentions and comments within the tools. And you want to know what's neat? Maybe you're a stakeholder on a work item and you're not actually working on it, but you care where it's at, or maybe you have a dependency on it. You can actually go follow that work item and be able to see how it gets updated over time. Once it hits that state that you're looking for, boom, you can now immediately start whatever activities you have without having to wait to be notified by that individual. It's great. All right, let's talk team workspace tools. Tools like Confluence provide your remote-friendly teams a home, a place where they can store information, collaborate on content, and simply radiate information out to the world. At Atlassian, of course, we use Confluence. It's our source of truth. We have everything in there from policies and procedures to notes to project kickoffs. Everything you can need is in Confluence, and that's where we know we can find stuff. What I love about Confluence is it allows you to have in both either a sync or an async world, the ability to collaborate on content. Maybe you're in a meeting and you want to go through a document together. People can be going and adding comments and @ mentions during that session. Or you can do that in a distributed way where throughout the next 2 days, people do that same thing. Confluence allows you to kind of play in both those worlds. Confluence also helps you work across time zones. Maybe you got someone in Sydney and you got someone else in Detroit. Now, instead of trying to get a meeting time that works best for both of those, you can give them both a Confluence page and allow them to add comments, create discussions, and be able to have that conversation in an async way. Finally, we've got ideation tools. Whiteboarding tools like Miro and Mural are great async collaboration tools that we can bring into the ideation process. This could mean brainstorming, project planning, or even decision-making. Each of these represents an opportunity for us to collaborate with multiple people in a space to come up with a decision or a next step on something. The neat thing about these tools is they allow multiple people to join all together at once or on their own from wherever they're at in the world to be able to go and add thoughts and ideas to the different decisions or ideas that they're playing with. And in the end, all stay aligned. What's really neat is coming soon, Confluence is going to have its own whiteboarding feature built right in. Confluence Whiteboards is going to give us that ability to have that rapid kind of fluid brainstorming in an open space and then immediately translate that information into actionable deliverables in our work management tool.
In this video, you're going to learn what is async ideation, the 3 types of ideation, and an example of ideation in action.
Typically, when we start a project, our teams are in an ideation sort of phase, trying to figure out what it is we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, how we might do it. Ideation is one of those practices that can benefit from both async and sync tools and techniques. When we go into an ideation session, sometimes people find it difficult to be able to put ideas right on the board in the 5-minute time that we give people to brainstorm. I know I do. Sometimes I like to sit back and ruminate on the idea to be able to see what might be the best thing I want to put down on paper. When you're doing things in an async way, you can use tools like Confluence or whiteboarding tools to give people the opportunity to go add their ideas when it makes sense. It might be in the meeting, it might be right after I wake up in the morning tomorrow. Whenever's the best time for me to think, I want to apply it then. Now, there are 3 types of ideation we want to talk about: brainstorming, decision-making, and project planning. With brainstorming, your goal is to generate as many ideas as possible. You can set up a Confluence page or maybe a whiteboarding tool. The idea is to set up the space and then allow participants the time to generate as many ideas as possible. You can then take these ideas and then move them to the next stage in the project. When it comes to deciding which of those ideas to pursue, you've got to have some sort of practice to help you inform how you make those decisions. For us here at Atlassian, we use a tool called Ideation to help us in our decision-making process. Ideation stands for driver, approver, contributor, and informed, and is our framework for helping us kind of align around what decisions we need to make, how we make them, and actually help move work forward. We've got a template built into Confluence that makes it really easy for us to outline these decisions. When it comes to project planning, Confluence represents a great tool to be able to do things like document the project poster, identify the roles and responsibilities, and outline the next steps. Also, as you're going through the ideation process and you start coming up with work, you can easily convert those work items in Confluence into Jira issues.
Now let's take a look at an example of async ideation in action using these tools. All right, so let's say I'm on the marketing team at my company and I'm in charge of running a campaign to launch our newest product. Right now we're in the early ideation phase of our project and need some fresh ideas from the team. So where do we start? Well, where I like to start is in Confluence and using a template to create a project poster. And this is separate from ideation, but what the project poster is it's just a good central place for all the information about our project, right? Where does this fit into the broader strategy? Who are the team members involved? Why are we even doing this? How do we measure success? So since we've already built this project poster, the next step is we need to come up with some ideas for our product launch campaign. So where I'm going to start is in a whiteboarding tool. And the cool thing about Confluence is there's a whiteboarding tool built right in. If you go to the side panel under Apps, you'll see an option for Whiteboard. Now this is a brand new feature of Confluence, so the time I'm recording this video, you may not see it in your Confluence yet, but just know that it's coming soon, so stay tuned for that. So if we click into Whiteboard, you can see that we're here inside the whiteboarding tool within Confluence. With any whiteboarding tool, I always like to start with a template. And since we're doing brainstorming, I can select the brainstorming template here. So what I've done, I'm not going to use the template exactly. I've customized the template a little bit to fit what I'm looking for. I've set it up so that each person has their own column and they can just document their ideas on each sticky note down here. So this is where we start the async ideation. So instead of scheduling a meeting and having everyone do this brainstorming session live, to be honest, that wastes a lot of time. If you only have a 5-minute timer, you can't really come up with that many ideas. So instead, we're gonna do it async. What we're gonna do is that we've agreed, we'll give everyone 2 days to come up with as many ideas as they can asynchronously. On your own time, whenever you are thinking fresh, whenever your ideas are turning, that's when you can jump to this whiteboard and throw your ideas onto this list. So I'm gonna jump up here, share this whiteboard with the team, give them the instructions, and we'll come back in a few days. All right, so we're back after our 2 days where the entire team has taken time async to come up with ideas, and look how many ideas we have here documented. So now that we are in this live session together, we don't need to spend any more time coming up with new ideas. We've already got a bunch of them here to work from. Sometimes as we're talking about our ideas, we will, a new one will pop up, and that's really exciting. So we'll add that to the list, but we're going to move straight over into the next step, which is decision making. Over here, we've set up this chart that goes from low impact to high impact and high urgency to low urgency. And what we're going to do is we're going to plot all of the ideas that we came up with directly on this graph. So then we can tell which ideas should we actually pursue and which ideas we can kind of take on another time. So we do that, we plot all of these ideas, and we look up at the very top. The highest impact, highest urgency is to launch a giveaway contest. All right, so we've made the decision that that's what we're going to focus on for right now. Then we move down to the last type of ideation, project planning, right? So we've identified that we want to launch a giveaway contest. Now, what are all the tasks involved to complete this larger project? So as a team, we can walk through and add a sticky for each of those tasks. So when we feel pretty good about this list, what we can do is we can select all of them. And because we're in an Atlassian tool, you can see this little thing pops up where we can create Jira issues directly from within a whiteboarding tool. So we're going to do that. Going to make sure that our site and our project are correct, which they are. And we're going to select create. So now all of these are Jira issues that will be over in our Jira Work Management project to help us track the work. All right, so there it is. We've gone through each of the 3 types of ideation using both sync and async tools and techniques. In this video, you're going to learn the benefits of async work management, tools for managing your work async, and we'll look at an example of planning and managing your work asynchronously.
All right, so after the ideation phase, we finished that. Now we can actually move into the get stuff done phase, right? It's actually where we start managing the work. Now, the thing is we've got to figure out in an async world, how do we manage this work across distributed teams? We're no longer in a single place. We're around the world. How do we do this in an effective way so that way we can make sure we understand when the work is happening, how the work is happening, and what do we need to get the work done? One of the neat things about applying async tools and techniques to the planning process is that it actually eliminates many of the meetings that we used to have. I'm sure if you look at your calendar as you're beginning work, you had many planning meetings there. Now we can do that in an async way by leveraging tools like Jira Work Management and Trello to be able to place our work in there and collaborate asynchronously. First, let's talk work management tools. Tools like Jira Work Management and Trello are great tools to help teams collaborate and align on the specific deliverables that they're focused on as part of a project. These tools allow teams to actually track their work as it progresses, and as well as communicate about the work. They can use things like commenting and @ mentions to be able to collaborate with each other. Tools like Confluence give our remote-friendly teams a home, a place where they can create new documentation, spar on ideas, as well as store information for the long term. Confluence allows teams to work across time zones. You can go onto a Confluence page and add comments and ideas. That way, when you're working with a team member who is 12 hours around the globe from you, you can both be able to provide meaningful feedback on documentation.
All right, let's look at an example of planning and managing work asynchronously using Jira Work Management. Let's say I'm on the marketing team at my company and I'm in charge of running a campaign to launch our newest product. If you watched the last video, our team just went through an async ideation process using a whiteboard tool, and we took those tasks and we converted them into Jira Work Management tasks. Well, that's where we're going to start with this one. We are opened up to Jira Work Management. This is the tool we're going to use to track and manage all of our work across the project. All of our tasks that we just created from the whiteboard tool, they were imported here in our to-do column. And our team here, we're using a pretty simple workflow, right? We have to do, in progress, and done. And so the way it works is that each one of these tasks, it can move across this workflow, and then all of us on the team, we can have an idea of what tasks are in progress, which ones are done, which ones are still to do, without ever meeting in person. All of this can be done asynchronously from wherever we are in the world. So what we've done is gone through all the tasks and assigned owners, we've assigned due dates, and if we click into a specific task, we can see that there's more details here, there's a priority level that we can set, and we can actually link out to the deliverables that we're working on. Since I'm responsible for this entire project, I want to keep a pretty close eye on a lot of these tasks. So if I click on this one, defining the contest scope and details, I can see there are some comments that have been added, but I can also see that there is a Confluence page linked here. So that's one of the benefits of doing this asynchronously, is that we're tracking the work in Jira Work Management, but the actual work that's happening can be linked here and opened up and viewed in Confluence, right? And this is important to just take a pause and talk about the way that I'm using Confluence, because this might be a different approach than you've been used to on your team. Confluence is where all of our work actually lives and gets done, right? It's not just a place that we're storing information or using as a reference. This page here that you're seeing is the actual work. The marketing campaign is a Confluence page itself, not just something linked to Confluence. So something to keep in mind as you think about new ways that your team can use Confluence for async collaboration. So that's one of the true benefits of this, is the transparency that we're linking where the work is being tracked to the actual work itself, so that all of us at any time working asynchronously have insight into what's going on. So most of the time in Jira Work Management, I spend time in the board view, because that's where I can see where all of the items are in the workflow, which items still need to be complete, and follow along overall with the status of each task. But at a high level view, the summary page is really helpful as well. This is where I can just get an overview of everything that's going on with the project, right? So what percentage of tasks are in to do, in progress, in done? What's the recent activity? So what's the discussion happening on some of those issues? Priority breakdown, and then team workload. So I can see the percentage breakdown of individuals on the team and what percentage of tasks they have assigned to them. So this is really great, right? Going back to the board view, instead of having meetings every week for us all to talk about these work items and what's going on, we can do that asynchronously all within this tool. We can add comments and communicate within the Jira tasks themselves. And again, that transparency of having a project tracking tool where we're tracking the individual tasks and linking that to the actual work completed. In this video, you're going to learn the benefits of async pre-work, and we'll explore an example of async pre-work to help you run better meetings.
Sync meetings are still a necessary part of life. There are still some problems that require us to work face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom to be able to solve those problems the most efficient and effective way possible. But we can include some async tools and techniques to kind of improve things along the way. Now, when we think about collaboration touchpoints, think about meetings and other interaction points, we group those into three things: improving, eliminating, and transforming. Your goal when you're looking at your meetings is either improve your meeting, eliminate your meeting, or transform your meeting into something new to get better value out of it. So if you decide you need a sync meeting, there are things you can do before and after in an async way to make it more valuable. We've talked about some of these tools and techniques for sync communication in prior videos. So for this video, I'm going to focus in on an example demonstrating how async techniques can be brought into a sync-based meeting, leveraging some of the things I do as a facilitator to make my meetings more effective.
All right, so let's get into the example of using async pre-work to run better meetings. Okay, so let's say I'm on a marketing team and I'm in charge of running a campaign to launch our newest product. If you watched the last video, you saw that we got all of our tasks organized in Jira Work Management. And now it's time to start collaborating and actually getting the work done. Let's start on our Jira Work Management board. And the main task that I'm working on at the moment is to define the contest scope and details. This one here. So let's open this task and then click over to the Confluence page that's linked to where we're actually getting the work done. So to complete the contest scope and details, it really requires input and feedback from two main stakeholders, Charlie and Ivan. Now, what I could do is just set up a sync meeting and we could all just talk about it for a few hours. But honestly, that would not be a super effective use of all of our time. And because we're in different time zones, it'd be difficult for us to have that many overlapping working hours. So what I'll do instead is really think about the async pre-work I can set up before we meet to make sure that our sync meeting is the most effective it can be. So for this type of work, I'm really looking for Charlie and Ivan's feedback on this initial draft that I created. As you can see, I've created the draft in Confluence, but you can use any type of tool where it's easy to add comments and get feedback. So the idea is that before we meet in person, Charlie and Ivan will have a chance to review this page and add their feedback as comments. So what I could do is just share this page with them, send it over, and ask for their feedback. But I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm going to record a quick 3-minute Loom video walking them through this Confluence page. I find that creating a Loom video, it adds more context around specific details that might be misunderstood, and it helps to save my stakeholders time. I've worked with these two for quite a while, and I know that Ivan specifically, he prefers to watch videos instead of reading. So in just a few minutes, it only takes me 3 minutes to record, I can make it much easier for him to review my page. So I have my Confluence page, I've recorded my video message on Loom. Now what I'm going to do is share both those links with my stakeholders. I'm going to provide very clear details, asking them to add their comments, any questions and feedback onto this page directly. And we've agreed to 2 full working days to get this task done. So that's the async pre-work. And what this does, it allows the stakeholders to get the work done on their own schedule. Charlie, she's based in Sydney, Australia. I'm in Denver, Colorado. Because of our time zones, that overlapping sync time is pretty scarce, right? So this gives us an opportunity to collaborate on this work without having to worry about that overlapping time. So once that's sent out, next I'll send out an invite for a sync meeting about this in 2 days. And the idea is that if we've done all of the pre-work, our time together, when we come together for only 30 minutes, will be far more efficient and effective. So now that we're in a sync Zoom meeting, what I can do is, based on all of the async comments they added, I can get an idea of what the most important points are for us to discuss in the meeting. And that'll help me get an idea of what to prioritize talking about in the meeting so that we can all feel like we're aligned at the end of the 30 minutes. So instead of a long, aimless introductory meeting about this project, since we did this async pre-work, I now have specific outcomes and we're already way further ahead on getting the work done. So after our productive meeting, there's also some async post work I can do. I share the meeting notes and action items with the stakeholders, also on a Confluence page, and then encourage them to add anything that I may have missed or anything that they'd like to contribute. And there we go. We successfully used Confluence and Loom to do async pre-work to make sure that our sync meeting together was the most efficient and effective it could be. In this video, you're going to learn the purpose of a status meeting, why status updates should be done async, what is Atlas, and we'll explore an example using Atlas for async status updates.
When we look at collaboration touchpoints, things, meetings, and other interaction events, we typically group them into 3 areas: improve, eliminate, or transform. We're either going to look at a meeting and say, let's improve that meeting, or we're going to say, let's get rid of that meeting, or let's turn that meeting into something that can add more value. Well, status meetings tend to be one of the easiest meetings that we can eliminate, because guess what? There are a ton of async tools and techniques out there that allow us to communicate the same information that a status meeting would without ever having to meet in person. Before we move on, let's talk about the purpose of a status meeting. The goal of a status meeting is alignment, for everyone to kind of get a sense of what's going on with a particular project or body of work. Now, traditionally, what this looked like is it looked like a once-a-week meeting where, let's say, 100 people got together on a phone call, and you would go through small status updates on each of your projects. As a project owner, I would have maybe 30 seconds to share an update on my work, and then I would spend the next 2 hours just listening to everyone else's work. Talk about a great use of time, right? Why should status meetings be done async? The thing is, when done properly, an async status meeting is simply going to give you all the information pertinent to the current situation on a project. If updated properly in different tools, you can be able to gain that yourself without having to meet in person to do that. I used to go to a status meeting that was all day on a Thursday. Think about it, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on a Thursday, where hundreds of different projects would come together. The thing is there were hundreds of us on this call, and I would venture to say that thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars was being wasted every week at this organization because we would just sit there and listen to what's going on. There's got to be a better way, and there is. Atlas is Atlassian's answer to the status meeting. Many times in the past, we'd get on a phone call or we meet in person to share a status update. But why do that when maybe we can each have a project established in a central tool and allow us to provide updates on the projects and goals we're working on? That's what Atlas does. Atlas is essentially a team directory. Teams can establish themselves in there and be able to identify the projects and goals they're working on. They can then connect with other teams who are also contributing to those. Within Atlas, you have the ability to share information on the project and goals. Why are we working on this? What is it about? And then most importantly, you can provide weekly updates in terms of what's going on with it. What's the health of the project? What's the latest update we have? What's beautiful about Atlas is it also limits how much information can be shared. You only have a certain number of characters that you can put in there, so you have to be concise with that update. In Atlas, you don't have to go hunting around for those status updates either. For each of the projects and goals that you follow, you will actually receive a weekly notification. Maybe it's email, maybe it's Slack, giving you a consolidated view of all the projects and goals you're watching and their current status. By leveraging tools to help encourage those forcing functions, things like Atlas that give you prompts to say, add your update by end of day on Friday, this gives us our ability to bring that forcing function that many times a status meeting was designed to do, to help get that aligned update. And if you do the async status updates right, you can actually free up time from hundreds of people's schedule every week. Think about that meeting I just told you about. All of a sudden, all of us can actually work on getting work done versus sitting in a room waiting to give a 30-second update.
All right, let's take a look at an example of how a team can use Atlas as a tool to replace their status meetings. Okay, so let's say I'm on the marketing team and I'm in charge of running a campaign to launch our newest product. If you watched the last videos, you know our project is moving along well, but I'm looking for efficiencies to reduce the number of meetings that our team has on the calendar. So it seems like the best place to start is to eliminate our weekly sync status meeting, and instead we'll use an async tool like Atlas. So this is the homepage of Atlas, and this is where I can see all the updates on projects and goals, right? Atlas is meant to be a very high level update, right? It's not supposed to get into the details of what everyone's working on. It's really at the highest level, providing transparency so everyone has an idea of how projects and goals are tracking. So what I'm gonna do is I've created a project for our team around the project launch campaign. So I'm gonna go ahead and click into our main project here. On the right side, it shows some information about the people that are involved, what goals this project contributes to, and then you can also link to different places. So where the work is tracked, this goes to our Jira Work Management board, and then these go to Confluence pages that actually talk about the project themselves. So people that do come to this page, they can click to that deeper level to see what's happening with the project, but this page itself still just keeps everything at a high level. The most important part of this page is over here on the left side. This is where all the project updates happen. So anyone that comes to this page can see at a high level that our product launch campaign is actually at risk to be delivered by its intended target date of February 2023. And so these statuses can change, right? So this right now we're at risk, but this could change to off track, could change back to on track. Maybe it gets deprioritized, it could be paused, or when it's finished, we can move this to completed. So for the stakeholders on this project, they can look down here and see what the risk is, right? So I've identified that the risk is a budget approval that's delayed due to our internal finance processes. So once our stakeholders can see what the risk is, the risk itself can prompt a further discussion. And maybe that is what we actually spend our sync time talking about instead of the high-level status update. We figure out how we can solution and resolve this specific problem. So the whole goal of this, right, is to replace our sync meetings. So what I've done is I've set up a process that every Thursday, I post an update here, and that's what replaces our sync meeting. So let's say that we resolve this budget approval problem, right? And so I'm posting my new update on Thursday, and I'll post that there are no risks, that the budget was approved and the finance process was resolved, and we're now going to start building deliverables. I'll also update this status back to on track, so we're all set. And notice down here, I'm only able to type 280 characters total, because the behavior Atlas is trying to drive is that this really is just a high-level snapshot. Let's not get into all the details here. If you want to link out to the details, that's great, but this text that you post here really should just be the highest level, most important updates for stakeholders to see. I'll click post here, and we can see that the project has been updated to back on track. And what happens now is that anyone that's following this project will actually get notifications pushed out to them about the status update. So you can integrate this with Slack or other instant messaging tools. It can also be pushed to email. However, your stakeholders best prefer to receive that information, but the status update will pop up for them in that specific channel that they prefer asynchronously. And that's it. Right? Quick and simple. I've taken 3 minutes to post this weekly update, and now all of my teammates and stakeholders have received this status update async without us ever having to meet in person. So that way we've reduced the total number of meetings that we have and total number of hours spent in sync time. And what we can do is we can now save that sync time to discuss more important matters than just the simple status update.
Async work is still new. Let's be honest. Last couple of years, we were forced into this async distributed world, and we're still all trying to figure it out. So it's okay. Now, as we progress, async and distributed are here to stay. That is the future. So today, I actually want to share with you some tips and tricks to help encourage you to practice more async in your world. Now, you don't have to go all out and do all of these, but I encourage you to kind of stretch outside your comfort zone. Try some things on for size, see how they fit, and also come up with your own techniques based off these. Your goal is to reduce the number of meetings, improve the amount of time you can focus on getting work done, and help encourage your distributed team to work in its best way possible. And honestly, async techniques like these will help you get there. So let's take a look. The first tip I have for you is more of a mindset tip, and this is the idea of start slow. Change is hard. We're still struggling with this. We see this demand to come back into the office or stay remote. People are struggling with how do I work in an async way? So be patient. What I encourage you to do in this case, focus on introducing small changes. Maybe you're going to bring in a Confluence page with an agenda to your next meeting. That's not forcing a ton of async work on people, but what it is just showing them a new way to approach async from their world. Next, push yourself to experiment. Go out there and actually spend some time figuring out what tools, what techniques might work best. Be willing to experiment across different things. One of the things that I'm doing personally is I'm using both Jira Work Management and Trello to manage my work. And I'm trying to figure out which one is going to be the best one for the job. The thing is I need to provide visibility to my leadership, but I also want to be able to work in a way that fits me best. So I encourage you to do the same. Find those things that you could try and see what kind of hypothesis you can generate around those. What are you trying to test out? And then keep testing. Ask your team for feedback asynchronously. Am I right? Go out there and talk with your team. Find out, hey, if we couldn't meet together, how could we collaborate? Actually survey them and find out what things are they doing? What things are they trying? Because just like me encouraging you to try things, I'm sure they are too. Maybe throw together a whiteboard and have them throw their ideas on there. The goal is to make this not just a you process, but to make it an us process. Because async distributed work is not just about a person, it's about a team. It's important when we're working in an async distributed way to establish a working agreement. If you've not done one of these before, go check out the play in the Atlassian team playbook. It's all about establishing intentional things that we agree to work with each other on. I like to talk about working agreements as making the implicit explicit. When are we going to work together? What hours? Are we going to have meetings? If so, are we going to bring certain things like maybe agendas of those? Identify what are the things that are important to each of the team members on your team to work in a distributed async way and incorporate those in. The cool thing about a working agreement too is it's not a one-time done thing. It's a living and breathing document. So as you go out there and try some things, always come back and say, hey, is our agreement still valid? Do we need to update this? That way for your team, you have that explicit understanding of how we want to work together in an async distributed world. Next, do the pre-work. Regardless of the fact, we know we're always going to have sync meetings. The worst thing that can happen with a sync meeting is that you don't do the pre-work. You don't go and establish things like an agenda or send out reading material maybe a couple days before. You go into a meeting and you hope to wing it, it's going to fail. So do the pre-work. Plan that out. Try to encourage async practices by, like I said, sending out a document 3 days before and encouraging that kind of asynchronous collaboration prior to the event. Next, be intentional with how you use those async collaboration tools. Tools like email as well as Slack or other messaging tools can rule over you with notifications. I don't know about you, but when I see a notification come up on my screen, maybe an email or a new Slack message, I almost want to immediately go over there and respond. That's not the purpose of async communication. Instead, set aside some intentional time on your calendar to respond to those things. Maybe it's in the afternoon is when you focus best on getting work done. So in the mornings, you actually spend your time responding to Slack messages and emails. Set aside that time and be intentional. Finally, avoid the burnout problem. Async distributed work has done tons for how people work. It's enabled people to work where they want, when they want. It's fantastic. But the dark side is that it also causes us to sometimes be on all the time. I have teammates that are in Europe as well as in Australia. And when I am on at home in my personal time, I tend to find myself getting onto email or Slack, and I notice that they've responded to something and I want to respond to it right away. The thing is if we don't set those personal boundaries, you will burn yourself out. So be intentional about it. Just like we've talked about before, set those working hours as well as an understanding around when we get back on messages in your team agreement. Go ahead and turn off those notifications. I always encourage you to get rid of applications like Slack and email from your phone and be intentional about using it at your workstation. Again, if we don't take control of this, it will take control of you. So be intentional with your time, set those boundaries, and make sure that you don't go all up Human Torch-like and burn out on us.